Coming up with a name for your band or a stage name for yourself can be really hard. You need something that's catchy and something that stands out, but how do you come up with it? Well, there's a really easy process to do it. You just need to avoid a few things. Let me show you. Hey, and welcome to Music Space. Here we help musicians monetize their craft. So if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell to stay updated when new videos are uploaded. Okay, so I want to start this off by answering some of the most common questions that come up when people are talking about naming their bands or coming up with a stage name. And the first one is, can you or should you use a name that's already taken? The simple answer is yes, you can, at least in most cases. Now, there may be some cases where bands have their names copywritten and stuff like that, and it's a brand and all of that kind of stuff, and you're not able to copy it. But if it's just some average name, some average band, and by average, I don't mean anything negative. I'm just saying like it's an average band name or something like that. You can use it, you can take it and spell it differently, and you can even do that with names that are copywritten or that are branded with other bands. And of course, the question that follows that is, should you copyright your name? And the answer to that is, it's kind of up to you. It's really not that necessary. It's likely not the case that someone else is going to steal your band's identity and start operating under your name as you. And, there's many ways to differentiate yourself besides your name. So in most cases, it's not necessary, but again, that's something that's your call. And then the final question that comes up is, how much does a stage name or a band name actually matter? Well, it matters in the sense that you want to have something for people to be able to label you and remember you by. But the other part of it that doesn't matter much is sort of the minutia that we get in when trying to come up with a name. Like, we're trying to come up with something super unique and all of that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff matters a whole lot less. Now, I talked about things that you need to avoid, and it's really three big things that you kind of have to stay away from when you're coming up with the name for your band or stage name for yourself. And the first one is, you really want to avoid names that are hard to say or hard to speak. And this is because, generally speaking, the easier a name is to say or speak, the easier it's going to be to remember. And the opposite is also true. If you have some complicated name that's really difficult to speak or say or pronounce, people are likely just going to kind of write it off and at least be less likely to recall it. And again, this is something that you want in a name, something that people can remember and recall easily so that they can remember who you are, and that makes it more likely that they will call you for events, call you for gigs and stuff like that, right? And so the next thing that you want to avoid follows that, and that is you want to avoid names that are hard to spell. And the reason for this is because of marketing purposes and social media and stuff like that, and your website if you have one. When people go to look up your name and search for what you do and what kind of band you are or what kind of musician you are and all of that, and they have to type in some really difficult spell to URL or go on Instagram and search some really hard to spell name of a band or stage name that you've come up with, it makes it less likely that they're going to keep or put any, reasonable effort into keep trying to do that to find you. In today's time where all of our attention spans are extremely short, people are going to go type that in one time, and if it's not spelled how they think it should be spelled, they're just probably going to give up on it. And the third thing you need to avoid is one that's really crucial, and that is you need to avoid inappropriate names and names that are controversial. Now, I get it. I know some bands and musicians have, these personas that represent things that are sort of maybe sexual or whatever, we deem in our societies as inappropriate, right? But the reason you want to try to avoid these types of names, if possible, is because it's going to limit the types of gigs that you can get and the types of gigs that people are willing to give you. And it's also going to limit the amount of people that want to work with you. You're probably not going to be able to get a gig for like a church banquet or something like that. And you're probably not going to be able to get like a corporate gig from a Fortune 500 company where you're playing in front of 500 or 600 professional men and women that, are in the professional industry. And there's caveats for all of that, but it's likely that they don't apply if you're trying to come up with a band or stage name. So here's some things that you can consider when you're trying to come up with a name for yourself or your band. And one is you want to try to use the simple approach and just keep things easy and simple. You know, a name with like 2 to 3 syllables in it work really well. You want to come up with names and use names that sort of flow off the tongue really well, because this makes it easy to recall and remember. So for example, the name Guns N' Roses. You see how that it like flows? It's just like Guns N' Roses. Versus if you have some like complicated name that doesn't flow well, like, I don't know, Nomenclature Band of Wisconsin. Like, you have to do too much with your mouth to even pronounce that. And another thing is you want to come up with a name that you can identify with and that represents who you are as a band or as an artist. So it could relate to something as simple as like your physical appearance. Like, do you have something physical about you? Like you're really tall or you're really short, or, you know, the people in your band, like if they have some physical thing that's common amongst them, you can include that in a name. And of course, you can use as part of the name or come up with something that represents the type of music that you play. And one of the common ways to do that is include words like funk or party in the name or something like that, which kind of states the type of music you play. And then you can even get into including things in a name like your age or gender or nationality. So if you have something specific about you, like I know this band, all of the band members are over like 60 years old, and literally the name of the band, they call themselves the Old Farts. So that's a way that they use their age as part of their name. And you can include in the name something like from your life, something that's meaningful to you, some street that you lived on, you know, where you grew up, the first school you went to, or whatever, something that's meaningful to you. You can use that as information to include in your name. Now, one really great concept to use when you're coming up with your name is to use what I like to call contrasting themes. And what I mean by that is include things that kind of don't relate to each other or kind of don't go together or are opposite of each other. So I mentioned the name Guns N' Roses, and that's really a good example of this. Like, you have a gun and you have a rose. Just like two things that don't seem like they go together. Or another example of something like that's opposite, and this is one of the band names here in my city, is a band called Dry Water. So you see how that's like opposite. You have water that's like the definition of wet, and you have dry. So like dry water, those are two opposing things. And another name that I've come across is the Up Down Uptown Band. So you have two opposing things there as well, up and down, and then uptown, so up, down, uptown band. So you kind of have a bit of like a rhythmic flow to that, up, down, uptown band, right? But all in all, the name of your band or your stage name is not the most important thing. There's a lot more important concepts like business and being professional and stuff like that. And I've done quite a few videos on those subjects, and you can go here and check those out right now.